There are moments in life when you don't feel broken, you don't feel fine, you don't feel anything at all, and nobody really talks about that. Nobody tells you how strange it feels when your own emotions go quiet, like someone dimmed the lights inside your mind without warning. People think emotional numbness looks dramatic, but most of the time it's subtle, it's invisible. Sometimes it looks like sitting in your room staring at the wall, not sad, not happy, just suspended. Other times it looks like pretending to laugh because you know you should, or acting excited because that's what the situation demands, or telling someone you're okay because you don't even know what not okay would mean anymore. And the truth is, some people grow so used to feeling nothing that they begin to think that's who they are. When you study psychology deeply, you realize that emotional numbness isn't a personality trait. It's a signal, a message, a coping mechanism. It's the mind saying, I need to protect you from something you're not ready to feel. Most people think the opposite of feeling is apathy, but that's not quite accurate. Apathy is when you don't care. Emotional numbness is when you want to care but can't. It's when you want to feel, but something inside you turns off the switch. And that difference matters because it reveals something profound about the human mind. We are not built to be emotionless. We are built to survive emotions too big for us to hold. But let me take you somewhere familiar. Picture a moment from your past where you expected to feel something significant, a moment that seemed like it should have changed everything inside you. But instead you felt nothing. Maybe it was a quiet disappointment. Maybe it was a moment of loss. Maybe it was a fight, an ending, a goodbye. You braced yourself for impact, for the wave of sadness or anger or fear, and it never came. Just silence, a strange emptiness, as if your mind stepped between you and your emotions and said, not today. That's the psychology of emotional numbing. It's not a malfunction, it's a defense system, a very advanced one. Your mind can shut down emotional processing the same way your body can shut down pain during shock. It doesn't mean you're broken. It means you've been strong for too long. It means you've carried too many heavy moments without ever putting them down. The body collapses under physical exhaustion. The mind collapses under emotional exhaustion. But instead of falling, it shuts the doors. When psychologists study people who don't feel anything, they often discover a few common threads. Not everyone has all of them, but many have at least one. Emotional overwhelm, long-term stress, repeated disappointment, learned self-protection, or early life environments where expressing feelings wasn't safe or useful. When these patterns pile up, the emotional system adapts by going quiet. We often imagine emotional numbness as a cold void, but it's actually a shield made from the moments that hurt too much, from the battles you didn't have time to face, from the responsibilities you carried alone, from the expectations you were never allowed to drop. But the part that nobody explains is how lonely it feels. Not loud loneliness, the quiet kind, the kind where you sit among people and feel like you're behind a glass wall. You see them, you hear them, but you can't connect the way you used to. You can't feel that spark, that warmth, that depth of empathy. You start to forget what excitement used to feel like. You start to lose interest in things you once loved. And you tell yourself, maybe this is just adulthood, or maybe this is just who I am now. But deep down, a small part of you wonders if anything can bring you back. There's a concept in psychology called emotional blunting. It's when both positive and negative emotions get flattened. You don't get the highs, you don't get the lows, you just exist in a steady middle. And strangely, many people who experience this can still function perfectly. They go to work, they talk to friends, they reply to messages, they laugh at the right moments, they look completely fine. That's the irony of emotional numbness. It hides itself so well that even you may not realize how disconnected you've become. But I want to tell you something important. Emotional numbness is reversible. The mind is flexible. Feelings don't disappear. They wait. They hide beneath the surface until the mind feels safe enough to let them back in. And safety isn't just about your environment. It's about your internal world. It's about whether your mind believes you can handle what you're feeling. Think of someone who grew up in a household where showing emotion led to being ignored or misunderstood. In that environment, emotions become liabilities. The safest strategy becomes silence. Not external silence, but internal silence. The mind learns to suppress feelings not because it wants to, but because it must. And that same pattern can follow you into adulthood without you even noticing. When something stressful, overwhelming, or confusing happens, your mind automatically numbs you. It's a habit, a survival reflex. Other times, emotional numbness isn't about past patterns. It's about the present. When life becomes too predictable, too repetitive, too overwhelming, or too demanding, emotions can shut down as a way of conserving mental energy. The mind can think, I can't handle all of this at once, so it switches to a minimal feeling mode. And sometimes this happens not during big dramatic moments, but during long periods of slow, constant stress. It's like emotional frostbite. You don't realize the feeling is fading until you wake up one day and realize it's gone. And here's the part that surprises people. Numbness isn't always unpleasant. In fact, for many people, it becomes comfortable. A quiet place, a predictable place, a low-maintenance way of existing. When you're numb, there's no disappointment, no heartbreak, no fear. But there's also no joy, no excitement, no connection. It's like living underwater, calm, muted, heavy, slow. The world looks the same, but feels distant. What fascinates psychologists is how the mind tries to fill that emptiness. Some people bury themselves in work. Others distract themselves with constant entertainment. Others withdraw into solitude. Some become overachievers because they hope accomplishment will spark emotion again. Some become avoidant because feeling nothing is easier than facing the discomfort of feeling something. Everyone copes differently, but the goal is the same, to avoid the silence inside. If you've ever felt emotionally numb, you might recognize moments where someone asks, "Are you okay?" And you want to say yes because you don't have the energy to explain. Or moments where something good happens and you know you should celebrate, but the emotion won't rise. Or moments where you know you should cry, but the tears don't come. Or moments where you wonder if you're becoming colder, when in reality you're just tired, deeply tired, emotionally tired. Most people don't understand that numbness isn't the absence of emotion. It's the presence of too much unprocessed emotion. It's like turning the volume down on a radio that started playing too loudly. You still hear something faint in the background, but it's easier to ignore it. Until one day the volume rises again unexpectedly, and you're reminded that the feelings were never gone. They were just waiting. And this is where psychology becomes deeply human. When researchers interview people who report long periods of emotional numbness, many describe it with metaphors. It feels like I'm living in my head instead of my heart. It feels like I'm stuck in a room where all the windows are closed. It feels like something inside me went quiet. These descriptions matter because numbness is not a logical experience. It's a poetic one, a sensory one, a silent one. But here's something beautiful. Numbness often happens to people who feel deeply, not people who feel nothing. It's a temporary shutdown, not a permanent state. And ironically, the people who claim they don't feel anything often have some of the richest emotional worlds beneath the surface. They're not heartless, they're protective, they're cautious, they're carrying more than they admit. This is why many people who feel numb are incredibly compassionate. They can sense others' emotions even when they can't access their own. Psychology has a theory for this. When the mind blocks internal emotions, it often heightens external awareness. That's why someone numb can still care deeply about others, even if they can't connect to their own inner experiences. But emotional numbness has another side that people rarely discuss: the fear of emotion returning. Many people who feel nothing secretly worry that if they start feeling again, it will all come back at once. The sadness, the frustration, the stress, the memories. So they avoid things that might trigger emotions, even positive ones. They avoid connection because connection requires vulnerability. They avoid love because love requires openness. They avoid change because change might awaken emotions they don't know how to process. And this leads to a strange paradox. The fear of feeling becomes stronger than the desire to feel. Not because they don't want joy, but because joy always comes with risk. And when someone has lived through enough emotional storms, even sunshine can feel dangerous. But what if I told you that emotional numbness isn't the end of feeling? It's the beginning of understanding. What if this quietness inside you isn't a failure, but a pause, a recalibration, a moment where the mind says, let me reorganize everything before you move forward? Because feelings don't disappear. They wait for us to return to them when we're ready. Sometimes readiness comes slowly, in small moments. The first time something makes you laugh unexpectedly. The first time you feel a small spark of excitement. The first time you enjoy a conversation a little more than usual. The first time music gives you a feeling you haven't felt in a long time. These moments might seem small, but they're signs that the emotional world inside you is waking up again. People who feel nothing aren't missing something. They're transitioning. They're shifting from one internal state to another. And transitions are uncomfortable, they're confusing, they're full of silence and reflection, but they're also full of potential. And the truth is, emotional numbness isn't something to fear. It's something to understand, because understanding it brings you closer to yourself. It helps you realize that you're not empty. You're protecting something important. And once you understand what that is, you can start unlocking the feelings again, carefully, slowly, at your own pace. But what nobody tells you is that emotional numbness isn't a sign that you've stopped caring. It's a sign that you've been caring for far too long without a place to put all that tenderness. And eventually, even the strongest heart gets tired of being the one that always feels everything first, carries everything longest, and hides everything deepest. So the mind steps in. It wraps the heart in a quiet layer of insulation, not to trap you, not to hurt you, but to give you room to breathe. And maybe that's the part people misunderstand most. Numbness isn't coldness, it's preservation. It's your inner world pausing itself until the outer world feels safe enough to let emotion return. You are not broken for feeling nothing. You are protecting yourself the only way your mind knows how. Think about the times when life has demanded more from you than you had to give. The deadlines, the responsibilities, the expectations, the unspoken emotional labor. When life becomes a constant test, the nervous system goes into conservation mode. It tries to save your energy by shutting down the parts of you that require the most emotional fuel. This isn't weakness, it's strategy. Even in studies on long-term stress, researchers found that people often enter a phase called emotional fatigue. It's not sadness, it's not anger, it's not fear. It's a muted state where emotions become distant because the mind is trying to keep you functioning. And in a strange way, emotional numbness is one of the most advanced forms of mental endurance. It means your mind refused to collapse. It refused to let everything hit you at once. It created distance, it created silence, it created space. But that silence can feel endless, and sometimes the hardest part is not knowing when the feelings will return. Some people wake up one morning and suddenly feel everything again. A wave of warmth, or a sudden relief, or a quiet shift inside their chest. For others, it returns more slowly, in small sparks, like flickers of emotion you barely notice. And for some, numbness fades only when life becomes gentle enough for the heart to open again. And gentleness is something we rarely give ourselves. We demand productivity, we demand strength, we demand resilience. But numbness isn't something that responds to pressure. It doesn't respond to force. It responds to compassion, to rest, to stability, to moments where your mind finally stops preparing for the next impact. For many people who feel nothing, part of the struggle comes from living in survival mode for so long that they forget what safety feels like. When you've lived with uncertainty, disappointment, or emotional unpredictability, numbness becomes a familiar home. You might even feel guilty about not feeling anything, which makes the numbness even heavier. But guilt is misplaced. Emotional numbness is not your fault, and it is not a flaw. It's a learned response shaped by experience. And that is why understanding your own emotional history matters. Not in a dramatic way, but in a reflective way. Ask yourself, when was the first time in your life that feeling too much stopped being safe? When did vulnerability lead to confusion? When did you learn to hold everything in? When did you learn that silence was easier than expression? You might not have clear memories or obvious answers, but your body remembers, your patterns remember. The version of you that learned to shut down emotions is still trying to protect you. Even now, emotional numbness isn't a sign that you've lost yourself. It's a sign that some part of you hasn't felt safe enough to return. But the beautiful thing is that it will. The emotional system is not fragile, it's resilient, it's adaptable, it's responsive. Feelings come back when the mind senses it is ready. Sometimes that readiness comes in the most unexpected moments. A meaningful conversation, a work of art, a quiet morning, a piece of music, a simple act of kindness. These moments slip through the cracks of numbness and remind you that something inside you is still alive, still listening, still capable of feeling. One of the most profound discoveries in psychology is that emotions don't simply vanish. They don't disappear forever. They reorganize themselves. They wait for the right environment. They wait for the right moment. They wait for the right version of you. The version of you who is more aware, more grounded, more capable, more compassionate. But let's talk about another side of emotional numbness, the part that hides itself behind achievement. Many emotionally numb people become overthinkers, overachievers, or overly responsible individuals. They do everything they can to stay busy because stillness could awaken emotions, they're not ready to handle. Achievement becomes distraction. Busyness becomes a shield. The mind thinks, if I keep moving, I won't have to feel anything. And in a world that praises productivity, nobody questions the emotional cost of being endlessly strong. People say things like, you're so disciplined, or you never complain, without realizing that sometimes the absence of emotion is not strength, it's exhaustion. There's also a psychological pattern called dissociation, a mild and common form of mental distancing. It's not dramatic, it's subtle. It's when you feel like you're watching your life rather than living it, when you feel like you're present but not fully connected. It's the mind stepping back to avoid overload. And many people who say they don't feel anything are actually experiencing this quiet form of dissociation without realizing it. But here's something hopeful. The mind does not stay dissociated forever. Humans are not wired to live emotionally disconnected lives. We are wired for meaning, for connection, for relational depth. We are wired to feel. Even if the feelings come slowly, even if they come softly, even if they come in quiet waves instead of thunderstorms, they come back. The emotional system is like a frozen river. It may appear still, but beneath the surface, water is always moving. Thoughts are moving. Memories are shifting. The heart is recalibrating. And sometimes what looks like numbness is actually transformation. People rarely talk about how numbness can signal inner growth, because before you step into a new emotional version of yourself, the old emotional patterns often quiet down. It's like the mind is preparing to upgrade parts of you, not in a technical sense, but in a psychological one. Letting go of old attachments, old wounds, old fears, creating room for something new, even if that new hasn't arrived yet. Numbness can be a waiting room, not forever, but for a season. And if you're in that season, it doesn't mean you're stuck. It means you're transitioning between who you used to be and who you're becoming. Sometimes the heart goes quiet before it learns how to speak again in a new language. But here's something else people forget. Numbness doesn't mean you're alone. Many people you meet every day have felt emotionally numb and never said a word about it. They smile, they laugh, they fulfill their responsibilities, they show up, but inside, they may feel a quiet distance from their own emotions, exactly like you. And maybe that's why emotional numbness is one of the most overlooked forms of internal struggle. It's invisible, silent, and easy to hide. But if you told someone you trust, I don't really feel anything lately, you would be surprised how many people would say, I felt that too. There is something incredibly human about losing touch with your emotions. Almost everyone experiences it at some point, especially during heavy seasons of adulthood. It's not a rare condition. It's a common response to a complex world. But numbness becomes painful when we start blaming ourselves for it. When we say, why am I like this? Or, what's wrong with me? Or, why can't I feel like everyone else? These questions don't bring clarity. They bring pressure, and pressure deepens the numbness. Instead, imagine asking yourself softer questions. What am I protecting myself from? What part of me feels tired? What would make me feel safe again? These questions don't force emotion. They invite it. And invitations are how the emotional world responds best. And now something important. The return of emotion often starts with physical signals rather than emotional ones. Your body awakens before your feelings do. Maybe your breathing becomes deeper. Maybe your chest feels lighter. Maybe you start sleeping better. Maybe you start noticing beauty around you again. These small shifts matter because the mind and body are connected. When one begins to heal, the other follows. There is also something incredibly powerful about reconnecting with small pleasures. A cup of warm tea, a soft moment of sunlight, a peaceful thought, a familiar comfort.